This is the Nation's Conspire channel. Welcome to today's show. Every single executive order that Donald Trump is putting out there is tying in to the globalist plans. And nobody out there is paying attention because in between every executive order, like this one about modernizing payments to and from America's bank account, which is all about going cashless, in between every one of those orders, Trump makes sure to fit in an executive order about common sense. Like in between some of these executive orders about how we're going to go cashless or how we're going to bring in AI governance and give $500 billion to Oracle and these other companies like NVIDIA so they could build out the World Economic Forum's AI governance. They talk about, hey, here's an executive order that men are men and women are women. We only have two genders. And everybody just applauds. And then when they tell you that we're going to modernize payments and stuff, they just fall asleep because they're going, I don't care about that. Tell me more about common sense. Tell me that men can play men's sports and women can play women's sports, right? Meanwhile, Donald Trump has ordered the end of U.S. government checks in digital disbursements overhaul. That's right. Trump's ordering the federal government towards electronic payments only. He is ending checks, which is another way of saying ending cash and forcing you into electronic payments. And this is all about artificial intelligence governance. Right in front of our faces, they are telling us that, this is a dated system, right? Years ago, that we said that Trump was going to get rid of checks, which really means cash in a sense, right? Because now, instead of getting a check for the government, everything's got to be done electronically. They'll make a few exceptions, they claim. But of course, we know, just like they're supposed to make religious exemptions, they refuse those things. And they'll refuse this. They'll force people into this if they want any type of payment from the government. That means Social Security, disability, anything along those lines, right? And while that's happening, keep an eye on Doge, because Doge wants more online identity verification. And Elon Musk and Doge have been involved in discussions about a digital ID and access to government data. Musk has been involved in building a digital ID registry, according to a post on X. The White House and Congress have considered creating a limited digital ID platform for public benefit programs. And this is all about cashless society, digital ID, control grid. At the same time of all this stuff, Trump's exciting all the people that they made temporarily rich with their crypto scam by backing crypto banks and stablecoin. And really, this is a war on the dollar, even though they won't tell you yet that it's a war on the dollar, and it's heading towards a cashless society. Donald Trump is bringing in every single New World Order initiative right in front of everybody. And I said, this is why people need to pay attention to how they're wording things and how they're deliberately manipulating things by telling you that they're going to do this, but not making a big deal about it, then making a big deal about how there's two genders. And that's the national news story, not about how all these payments are now going to go digitally, right? Here's Donald Trump signing that executive order saying this should have been done a long time ago.
Next, sir, we have an executive order for your attention relating actually to government payments. Historically, checks issued by the Treasury are, I believe, 14 times more likely to become the subject of fraud than electronic transfer payments. This is an executive order that's going to push the Treasury Department to modernize its payment system to ensure that where possible they're using electronic methods of payment as opposed to paper checks in order to reduce waste, fraud, and abuse in the government, which is obviously an endeavor that we've been pursuing in numerous aspects of government under your leadership.
It's basically modernization of equipment and methods, and it's something that really I think he's going to be a great Secretary of the Treasury wanted, Scott, and so we're doing this, and we have other modernization programs going on. We could let somebody else, whoever's next, whoever that may be, do it, but it's something that should have been done 25, 30 years ago. Okay.
Along similar lines, sir, this is an executive order. We're calling it Protecting America's Bank Account. The basic idea here is that instead of having lots of different departments and agencies and offices issuing payment, often without justification, often without any provided rationale. We're going to be centraling payment processes where possible in the Department of the Treasury and ensuring that measures are taken in Treasury against waste, fraud, and abuse to ensure that money that's leaving the public Treasury is as protected as it possibly can be.
All right, good. Many of these things should have taken place decades ago or longer.
Right. So for anybody out there that says, well, digital economy, this is just modernizing things, right? Because of course, everything they're doing is in the name of, well, our tax money's being burnt, right? They're telling us that they're lighting our tax money on fire, which everybody out there should know anyway, that that's what they're doing, but they're not really doing what they're saying with our tax money. They've actually used it for lots of different things, lots of different laundering things and lots of things under our feet, these underground cities that they've built that most people don't know exist because they're too busy looking over at Jeff's Island thinking that everything that's happening with children is happening over there, but it's actually happening underneath our feet. So people out there think that this is just us catching up with the times. All these MAGA people don't realize that the technology is what's going to enslave us. AI governance is the plan of the globalists, United Nations, World Economic Forum. And if you just even type this stuff in, just a basic Google search or basic whatever search you do, accelerating digital transformation for long-term growth, the digital economy, digital transformation, optimizing digital transformation. That's what the World Economic Forum is all about. Benefits of a cashless society. All these videos, identity in a digital world, shaping the future of a digital economy, new platforms for the digital economy, digital advantage, right? It's amazing how people avoid these topics and they just focus in on things like, oh, they're talking about us eating bugs. They're talking about this or that because, of course, the alt-right media likes to pull these basic concepts like, hey, the government's going to make you eat bugs. Hey, the government is telling you that there's 72 genders, right? And they get all irate about that, and they don't pay attention to exactly what this system is. This is a new infrastructure system. Trump's bringing it in. So let's take a look at the wording of this because it's important. Modernizing payments to and from America's bank accounts. Section 1 purpose. The continued use of paper-based payments by the federal government, including checks and money orders flowing into and out of the United States General Fund, which might be thought of as America's bank account, imposes unnecessary costs, delays, and risks of fraud, lost payments, theft, and inefficiencies, okay? Those are some of the things they're doing to convince people that this is a good thing. The government's wasting your money. All right, well, let's stop them from wasting our money, right? Oh, fraud, right? Something they always like to slap on everything. Oh, right, fraud. Could be fraud going on. They could be sending, this is something they've been working in the last couple of months, right? With the Social Security fraud, about people are getting Social Security payments who've been dead for 200 years, right? Trump said it at his State of the Union address. There's working people up here. This is PSYOP 101 stuff. Mail theft complaints, it says, have increased substantially since the pandemic. Historically, Department of the Treasury checks are 16 times more likely to be reported lost or stolen, returned undeliverable, or altered than an electronic funds transfer. Maintaining the physical infrastructure and specialized technology for digitizing paper records cost the American taxpayer over $657 million in 2024 alone. Now, you can look at that and you can say, well, how did it cost the taxpayer $657 million? So people are getting free money? Your tax money's going to, those are things that they say so that you say, do this, do it, make it electronic. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of the freeloaders. I'm sick of, these people not being held accountable, right? Meanwhile, they're doing exactly what they all want done, having a digital grid. This thing is going to be AI governance, everything controlled digitally. Your movements, your money, your purchases, freezing bank accounts, they will have full control over all of it. You might not see it today because you say, well, that'll never happen, right? But once they have this in place, you'll start to see them trying to pull and take more and more control. Because all they need to do is get it in place, and then they can do whatever they want. And there can't be any pushback once it's in place. So this order promotes operational efficiency by mandating the transition to electronic payments for all federal disbursements and receipts by digitizing payments to the extent permissible under applicable law, but not for avoidance of doubt to establish a central bank digital currency. So why do you think they put that in there? In case anybody was reading that getting suspicious. Trump wants to make sure, hey, this isn't about a central bank digital currency, right? But you put this in place, and then say in 4 years, they lift this thing about third terms and Trump runs against Obama and Obama's back in power, or somebody that you don't trust is in power. Wouldn't you start worrying about a central bank digital currency? And then you say, well, I don't want that. And you say, well, wait a minute, but they have this in place now. Everything's done digitally, right? So it's in place. You put in whoever you want in power. They suddenly tell you that they're not for the people. They want a digital currency. And then you're stuck with a digital currency, right? But I love how they put that right in there. But not for avoidance of doubt to establish a central bank digital currency. It's coming, folks. Then it says, it goes on to say, phase out, in Section 3, phase out of paper check disbursements and receipts. Effective September 30th, 2025, and to the extent permitted by law, the Secretary of the Treasury shall cease issuing paper checks for all federal disbursements, inclusive of intra-governmental payments, benefits payments, vendor payments, and tax refunds, except as specified in Section 4 of this order. All executive departments and agencies shall comply with this directive by transitioning to EFT methods, including direct deposit, prepaid card accounts, and other digital payment options, and take all steps necessary to enroll recipients in EFT payments, except as specified in Section 4 of this order, as soon as practicable and to the extent permitted by law. All payments made to the federal government shall be processed electronically, right? So think about that. I've talked about this recently with filing things in via the mail, right? If you do file your taxes or pay your taxes, I recommend you do it via mail, because when people continue to do stuff via mail, it forces their hand and makes them say, well, we can't force people in electronically because, 60% of the population is sending it in through the mail. Right? So they've waited and waited and waited till you did everything online so that they could push this forward. And then people just go, well, I pay my taxes on TurboTax anyway. I do everything online. So what's the big deal? Right? They've waited. Now they're going to take away your right to do anything via the mail or via physical payments or physical cash. And that's what the point is. They've gotten you comfortable with all this stuff. Now they're going to pull the rug out. Goes on to say the Secretary of the Treasury shall support agencies' transition to digital payment methods, including by providing access through the Department of Treasury's centralized payment systems, direct deposits, debt and credit card payments, digital wallets, and real-time payment systems, and other modern electronic payment options. Goes on to say in Section 4, exceptions and accommodations for the phase-out of paper check disbursements and receipts. The Secretary of the Treasury shall review and, as appropriate, revise procedures for granting limited exceptions where electronic payment and collection methods are not feasible, including exceptions for individuals who do not have access to banking services or electronic payment systems, certain emergency payments where electronic disbursements would cause undue hardship, national security or law enforcement related activities where non-EFT transactions are necessary or desirable, and other circumstances as determined by the Secretary of the Treasury as reflected in regulations or other guidance. Which pretty much means you're effed, because they're not going to give you exemptions. What are you going to do? Individuals who don't have access to banking services. Well, how do you cash a check really without having access to banking services? This is them forcing you in, and then them saying, well, we'll still take things into consideration if you're 90 years old and you don't know how to use a computer, but really, we'll just, use other people's tax money or your own, and we'll send you over to an accountant who will file it digitally for you, or whatever it might be. Collecting Social Security, etc., right? Section 5, implementation and compliance of electronic transactions. The Secretary of the Treasury, in coordination with the heads of agencies, shall develop and implement a comprehensive public awareness campaign, aka propaganda campaign, to inform federal payment recipients of the transition to electronic payments, including guidance on accessing and setting up digital payment options. Agencies shall coordinate with the Department of the Treasury to facilitate a smooth transition to digital payments, ensuring that affected individuals and entities receive adequate support. The Secretary of the Treasury shall work with financial institutions, consumer groups, and other stakeholders to address financial access for unbanked and underbanked populations. The Secretary of the Treasury and the heads of the agency shall take all necessary steps to protect classified information and systems, as well as personally identifiable information and tax return information through the implementation of this order. So this is September of this year. So anybody, and look, I don't expect people hosting my channel to file or pay their taxes, but these are the things that they're going to do, because I'm mentioning the taxes because this is a big thing now. Everybody's talking about Doge eliminating the IRS. Oh, they're firing IRS employees. They're auditing the IRS. And all these people have this pipe dream in their mind that Doge is getting rid of the IRS, that the IRS is going to be non-existent. It's not going to be corrupt anymore. It's not going to exist anymore. It's going to be way worse, because now they're forcing you digitally. And eventually, they're going to force you not only to file, okay? They're going to force you automatically, once you put your information into one of these TurboTax-like sites, they're going to force all the money out of your account immediately. Instead of you filing, not paying, maybe sending a little bit of money, right? They're going to be monitoring all your transactions digitally, so anything that you write off, don't worry about it. You don't even have to file anymore. We'll automatically write it off for you through the algorithm. So in other words, if you say that you had $10,000 in expenses at your corporation, at your company, right? Lunches, dinners, whatever. Not anymore. Now we can actually monitor every single payment, because you can't say that you spent cash here or spent cash there, because we see and know everything. And that's the point. And they don't want you to pay attention to it. That's why they put little lines in there like, oh, but this is not for the establishment of a central bank digital currency, right? This is Donald Trump bringing in the New World Order. This New World Order cannot function without a cashless society. And it's March, okay? Donald Trump has been 2 months, he's been in power. I've mentioned all the things I've covered in all these videos, all this stuff with artificial intelligence, and Starlink, and Stargate, okay? Think about this stuff with cash now. This thing I mentioned earlier with crypto and Trump and the stable coin stuff that's going on. And then think about the penny, how Trump is eliminating the penny, the reproduction of pennies, which means that they're going to take them out of circulation, because it means anybody who pays with a penny, when that store gets the penny, it's not going to go back into circulation. They're going to take it out of circulation. That's the point. And next up is the nickel, as they tell you, and the dime and everything else. Then you go to cash, right? And you stop hearing cash is king, because Trump is transitioning you, without you even realizing it, into crypto, into digital currency. While they make all these crypto stocks blow out through the roof, these people don't realize, well, eventually those things they're going to wake up and it's all going to be offline, because they're going to tell everybody there was a massive hacking or something along those lines. And all the money they made in crypto, you think they're going to let you have that? Think they're going to give you that in your digital payment account, your digital bank account? Think that's going to transfer from Bitcoin over to central bank digital currency or whatever they decide to call? Of course not. Of course not, because we're all going to live equally as equal slaves, equal income, equal FEMA homes, equal everything, right? We will all be equal servants to this system, and Donald Trump's the one bringing it in. So cashless society is really what this should be called, but modernizing payments to and from America's bank account, forcing you into digital payments without making a big deal about it. Of course, the news isn't going to cover this, right? NBC is opposed to everything Trump does. CNN's opposed to everything Trump does. You think they talk about this, right? Well, of course not, because they're in on it together. They can't have conservatives wake up. Because most conservatives watch the liberal media so that they can point out all the stuff that they're saying. Oh, wait a minute. Wait, they're cheering for Donald Trump and this cashless stuff. They're talking about being cashless. Wait a minute. They don't want to wake them up to it, right? They want to bring up the idea of technology and the internet being the enslavement system, the beast. They don't want to bring that up because they don't want to wake anybody up. So nobody out there even knows this is going on because they're paying attention to nonsense. Like I said, in between signing executive orders like this, Donald Trump's signing executive orders about there only being two genders, and everybody just cheers, and that's what goes viral on Twitter, and that's what goes viral on YouTube, and that's what all the alt-right media talk about and celebrate, common sense stuff, right? Well, the common sense that should be used here is seeing through the bullcrap and seeing that Donald Trump is bringing in AI governance, which is all digital, and this is just more proof of that. Get ready, because it's happening right before our eyes. I thank everybody for being here. I hope you're all doing well. God bless you and your families as always.